My name is Olivia Hart, and I married the kindest man I thought I would ever meet. He was gentle, patient, and always said the same line with a soft smile. No sex before marriage, Liv. Let's do this the right way. I believed him because his voice made those words sound like a promise wrapped in love. I believed him so much that I never once tried to push the line or ask why the rule felt like a wall made of steel. I kept my heart behind that wall because I thought the wall was safe. Our wedding night proved me wrong. It was a quiet hotel room in downtown Cleveland, a suite with white roses on the dresser and a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries by the window. The city lights looked like 1,000 candles. The air was sweet with perfume and new beginnings. I stood there in my lace slip, hands shaking but happy, and my husband, Ethan Ward, lifted my veil with a look that said we had waited long enough. We kissed. We laughed. He whispered that he loved me, and I said it back. I felt brave. I felt ready. I felt like the world had finally opened its doors. Then, in the softest moment of my life, I reached for him. I found something I did not understand, something that made no sense and all the sense in the world at the same time. I froze. I blinked. My brain refused to make the picture match the story I had believed for 18 long months. There was no heat of a secret we had saved. There was no proof of waiting. Between my husband's legs, I found the kind of truth that does not whisper. It screams. I screamed. My voice bounced off the high ceiling and knocked the roses out of their comfort. Ethan stepped back with both hands up like I had aimed a weapon at him. I could not stop the sound that was happening in my throat. It felt wild and sharp. I hugged my body as if I could keep the room from falling in on me. Something, a small, cold thing shaped like an answer I did not want, clattered to the floor and rolled under the chair. I did not follow it. I could not even move. Olivia, Liv, please, Ethan said, his face pale as paper. I can explain. But he didn't explain. Not then. Not one word more. I stood there with the city lights filling the window and my heart slamming against my ribs. I watched his mouth open and close. I watched fear climb into his eyes and take a seat there. I tasted metal at the back of my tongue. I wrapped myself in the hotel robe with shaking hands and walked into the bathroom because it was the only door I knew how to close. The mirror showed a bride who looked like me but also didn't. Her mascara was a river. Her hair was not a crown anymore. She pressed her palm to the glass as if she could step through it into another life where she didn't know what she now knew. Behind me, through the door, I heard Ethan whisper my name again. That is where I will leave that moment for now, hanging in the air like a lightning bolt that hasn't picked its tree. Because every lightning bolt grows from a cloud. The cloud started on a soft spring day at the animal shelter. I had gone to walk dogs after work like I always did when my job as a school counselor felt heavy. Ethan was there with a sack of donated blankets and a quiet smile. He had a calm way of moving. He wore a navy hoodie, and there was a little paint on the sleeve like he had been fixing someone's bench before he came. He offered to carry a bag for me. I said sure. We walked two big dogs who insisted on pulling us down the block, like a parade. He told me he taught 9th grade algebra and volunteered with Habitat for Humanity. He told me he loved old cars, but only the kind that refused to start without a little prayer. He told me he wasn't perfect. He said it so easily that I believed him. I told him I worked at Maple Ridge Middle School helping anxious kids find their feet. I told him my heart broke when a student cried. I told him I liked baking more than cooking, and my cupcakes always sank a little in the center, but still tasted good. He told me that honesty like that was rare. He looked at me like I mattered. 2 weeks later, he asked me to a farmer's market. He held my hand like it was made of glass and light. He made old ladies smile when he carried their baskets. He never rushed me. He never talked over me. He said please and thank you to the vendors. He bought me sunflowers. He also told me, on date 3, that he believed we should wait for marriage. He said it was about respect, about building something real, about not letting heat burn down what we were trying to grow. He said it mattered to him because of his faith and his past. He said he wanted our first time to be honest and holy. His eyes were warm and steady when he said it. My heart said yes, without much thought. I was tired of people who reached for my body before they reached for my soul. I liked the way he kept looking at my face like it was the main thing. Waiting became our rhythm. We kissed. We held each other. We fell asleep on the couch, sometimes with the movie still running. When the air got thick and my skin woke up and begged, he would smile and say, "Soon, Liv. We're close." And then he would grab his keys and drive us for ice cream, or we'd go take a late-night walk past the big houses by the lake. It was sweet. It was also strange, but I called the strange discipline and strength and a good man being good. Only once did the wall feel like a cage. It was a fall evening, leaves spinning in the streetlights. We had watched a sad movie that made me cry the way sad movies do when you are happy in your life. I leaned into him, and my hands did not listen to my brain. He caught my wrists gently and whispered, "Olivia." The way he said my name held a warning and a prayer. He stood, hugged me hard, kissed my hair, and then he left for the night. I was embarrassed. I was also a little angry at myself for pushing. The next morning, he brought coffee and a sticky note that said, "Thank you for choosing me over a moment." I put the note in my wallet. At the time, it felt like proof that love could be patient and still feel full. He proposed in January under a white sky that smelled like snow. We were at the shelter, of course, between two barking kennels. He said he wanted to build a home where kindness was not a guest but a member of the family. He pulled out a simple ring, the stone small and clear like a drop of clean water. I said yes while a pit bull named Daisy sneezed on both of us, and we laughed until I couldn't breathe. Planning the wedding was a mix of warm bread days and cold cereal days. My mom wanted a huge church with stained glass and gold ribbon on every pew. I wanted a small one. Ethan said he would be happy either way. He said he didn't need 1,000 eyes to see what he already knew. We settled on a mid-sized church with sun that pooled through the windows like honey. There were small fights, like the guest list and the color of the suits. My dad thought navy was too casual. He lost that one. Ethan was steady, steady, steady. He handled hard moments with quiet hands. He was kind to my little cousin Noah, who has autism and doesn't like loud sounds. He stood with my grandma when she needed to sit down and tied her shoe when the laces came loose. Little things like that are easy to miss if you're only looking for fireworks. I saw them. I fell in love with them even more. But there were strange moments too, pieces that didn't fit until later. Once, in the men's section of a department store, he flinched when a sales clerk joked, "Gotta look sharp for the honeymoon, right?" Another time, he dodged a medical form at an urgent care clinic when he had a bad cough, telling me he'd fill it out in the car. He changed in the bathroom with the door locked even when we were only trying on sweater sizes. When I teased him about being shy, he kissed my cheek and said, "I like keeping some things secret until they matter." His mom, Denise, was a storm that looked pretty from far away. She hugged me like a sister and then slipped in comments that stung after they passed by. "You're very modern," she said once, looking at my ring. "I guess small stones are a trend." She called her son my miracle in a tone that did not always sound like love. It sounded like fear wearing perfume. When I asked Ethan why she worried so much, he shrugged and said, "Ever since Dad left, she clings a little hard." I let that answer sit where it landed. I didn't press. The night before the wedding, my best friend, Jenna, handed me a blue ribbon for my hair and squeezed my shoulders. "You picked a good one," she said.
A slow, solid man.
"That's rare." She laughed and added, "And tomorrow you finally get to see if the slow part ends where it should." We giggled like teenagers, but the joke left a tiny chill in my body that I shook off like a bad dream. The day itself was bright and sweet. The pastor cried before my dad did. The music was old and warm. I walked down the aisle with my hand on my father's arm and found Ethan's eyes at the end like they were the only ones in the room. He said his vows like a promise he had been practicing every morning. I believed him. I married him. We left to the sound of bells and a confetti storm that stuck in my hair for hours. The hotel suite had a little card on the pillow. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Ward." I laughed when I read it out loud. Mr. and Mrs. Ward. It felt right. It felt safe. You already know what happened next because I started there. I reached for my husband and found the truth that broke the shape of our story. I did not know what words to use. I only knew how to scream. I stayed in the bathroom longer than necessary. I watched a drop of water slide down the mirror like a slow tear. I wanted to be kind because I have always believed kindness wins in the end. But kindness and confusion will fight inside you like cats if you don't give them room. Finally, I opened the door. Ethan stood exactly where I left him, as if moving would make the floor give way. He held the hotel robe tighter around his waist than anyone should hold a robe. The city glowed behind him, a million little eyes pretending not to stare. "Olivia," he said softly, "please sit." I did not sit. "Tell me the truth." He swallowed. He stared at a spot over my shoulder. He looked like a man trying to step onto a bridge that might not hold. His mouth shaped the start of a sentence. Then his phone pinged on the end table with a bright, cheerful chime that did not belong in that room. He jumped like he had been burned. He grabbed for the phone too fast. Instinct made me faster. I snatched it first. A text sat on the screen from an unknown number, just 5 words that made the floor tilt under my bare feet. "Does she know about Kansas?" My eyes dragged up to his face. The color left it like the tide. I didn't know about Kansas. I had never heard Ethan say that word. Kansas was a state I could point to on a map, but had no reason to think about on my wedding night. Still, there it was, 2 sharp syllables that felt like a trapdoor opening. "Give me the phone," he said, voice low. "No," I said, and I didn't recognize my own voice.
Who is that?
"What is Kansas?" "Olivia, please." His hands shook. This isn't." He stopped, squeezed his eyes shut, and inhaled like a swimmer before a deep dive. "I'll tell you everything tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I repeated. "After what just happened. After what I—" The words crashed together in my throat. I could not push them out without breaking.
No.
Now. Another ping. Another message from the same number. "You promised to tell her before the wedding. You promised, Ethan." The world narrowed to a duh. Ethan reached for the phone again, and I took a step back. He dropped his hands and looked at me like a man in a burning room who had just realized the windows were painted shut.
"I was going to tell you," he said.
"I swear." I tried, and then I saw how happy you were, and "Olivia, please." A knock sounded on the door. A firm, sure knock. Not a drunk guest. Not a bellhop. A knock from someone who knew why they were there. We both froze. "Room service?" I managed, though I had not ordered anything. Another knock. "Ethan." A woman's voice called, low and steady. "Open the door. We need to talk." We stared at each other, fear rising like cold water in a dark room. Ethan closed his eyes for one long second, then opened them and walked toward the door, like a man walking toward the edge of a cliff. "Don't," I said, but he kept going. He turned the handle, and the woman who stepped in wore a charcoal suit and a badge on a lanyard that glinted under the hotel light. She looked at me with kind eyes. She looked at Ethan with something else, a heavy sadness that said she had been carrying a story for too long. "Mrs. Ward," she said, almost a whisper. "My name is Agent Harper Cole. I'm here because of your husband." The room went silent except for the faraway hum of the city and the hammering in my chest. Ethan's face strained. My hands found the back of a chair and gripped it until my knuckles hurt. Agent Cole closed the door behind her with a soft click and set a plain white envelope on the table. My name was written across it in neat, careful letters. "We can do this gently," she said, voice steady. "But we cannot do it later." The envelope sat there like a snow-covered rock with something dark under it. Kindness matters. Empathy matters. I know that. I teach it to scared kids and broken-hearted parents. But standing in that room as a brand-new bride, with the word Kansas burning a hole in the carpet and a federal agent saying my name, I learned something hard. Kindness cannot grow in the dark. It needs light. I reached for the envelope with a hand that did not feel like mine. The door latch clicked again before I could open it, this time from the hallway side. A second key slid the lock. Someone else was coming in. The new door sound cut the air like a scream I hadn't let out yet. The latch turned, slow and sure, like someone who already owned the right to enter our room. Agent Harper Cole's eyes flicked to the door and then back to Ethan, measuring his breath. I felt the envelope in my hand like it held a live wire. The city hummed outside our window, but in here, time held its breath. The door opened. It wasn't a bellhop. It wasn't a stranger. It was Denise, Ethan's mother, wearing a pale blue coat and a face that had run out of color. She held a hotel keycard between two shaking fingers and gave a tense nod to the agent, like this was a meeting she had dreaded and practiced for. "I told the front desk I'm family," she said, trying to catch my eyes and missing. "They called me. They said there was a concern." Her voice wobbled on the last word.
Concern.
Such a small word for a storm that was already knocking over tables in my chest. Ethan sagged a little, like part of him was relieved to see his mother, and part of him knew she made everything worse. "Mom," he said, "you weren't supposed to come." Denise's mouth pulled tight. "You weren't supposed to need me." Agent Cole held up a calm hand, palm steady. "Ms. Ward," she said to me, and I heard the difference, Ms., not Mrs., as if the air itself was careful now. "I'm here in an official capacity, but I'm not here to hurt anyone. I need to speak with you and your husband tonight. The sooner you understand, the less danger you'll be in." Danger. Another hard word that did not belong to wedding nights or white roses. "What is this?" I asked. "Who are you exactly?" She reached into her blazer and showed a badge with her photo and a simple line of text. "Harper Cole, investigator, Kansas Bureau of Investigation." The letters sat there like quiet soldiers. "I work on interstate cases that cross lines when people try to hide behind them." Kansas. There it was again, that sharp map word that had cut my evening in two. The text on Ethan's phone pulsed in my head. Does she know about Kansas? What does Kansas have to do with us? I said. "We live in Ohio. We got married today." Denise closed the door and leaned against it like she was holding back a flood. "Harper," she said softly, "please let me talk first." Harper did not move, but her eyes softened. "You can talk, Mrs. Ward, but the facts won't change." Denise pressed her lips together, then looked at me as if she could pull me from a burning building with the right words. "Olivia, honey," she began, and the honey felt thick and wrong in my ears. "My son has been through trials. Things that no young man should have to face.
He's always been a good boy.
Always. He's tried to be strong, to be private, to carry his cross with dignity." "Mom," Ethan said, warning and plea. She pushed on. "I didn't want this tonight. I asked him to tell you before," she swallowed. "But he wanted to protect you. He wanted your wedding day to stay clean." "Protect me from what?" I said, because if I didn't put the question in the room, it would choke me. No one answered at first. The silence had weight. I felt an odd, cold thought. The most painful sound tonight was people not speaking. Harper tapped the envelope with one finger. "Open it, Miss Hart." My name on that thick white paper looked like it had been written by someone with good penmanship and a mean job. My fingers slid under the flap. The paper inside was official, seals, stamps, lines that knew they mattered. I unfolded the top page, and my eyes found what they were hunting without permission. State of Kansas, Certificate of Marriage. Names: Ethan Michael Ward and Hannah Claire Pierce. Date: 2 years and 10 months ago. Status: active. My mouth went dry like I had swallowed dust. I read the names again. I read the date again. Active. I felt the bed behind my knees and sat because my body did not trust my legs anymore. I looked up at Ethan. He looked back at me like a man begging for a jury that hadn't already decided. "Explain," I said. No shout. No scream. Just a word as flat and sharp as a blade laid on a table. Ethan's hands lifted, palms out. "I was going to." Harper cut in, not unkind. "Miss Hart, I know this is a shock. It has to come with context. This marriage," she nodded toward the paper, "was part of a medical emergency, an insurance arrangement, and a lie that became bigger than the people it was supposed to protect. Mr. Ward is still legally married in Kansas. He filed no divorce. He filed no annulment. which means the ceremony you had today in Ohio is not legally binding. I am sorry to be the person who says that in a room like this. I felt my chest pull tight like a closed fist. The words did not make a shape I could hold. Not legally binding. The bells.
The vows. The kiss.
The white dress that still hung on the closet door like a bright, sleeping lie. I kept my voice steady with both hands.
Why?
I asked Ethan. Why do this to me? Why do this to anyone? His face cracked. Tears stood in his eyes and made the city lights into tiny stars on his skin. I had cancer, he said. The word had the heavy honesty of a dropped hammer. When I was 23. Testicular. They took what they had to take to keep me alive. It wasn't neat. It wasn't simple. I was drowning in bills. I had a job that didn't offer real coverage and a body that needed more surgeries. I was angry. I was ashamed. He swallowed. I moved to Wichita to be close to specialist. That's where I met Hannah. Denise shut her eyes. We told him to come home. Ethan shook his head. Home didn't have a doctor who could fix what was broken.
Kansas did.
Hannah and I were friends. She was kind. She worked the night desk at the clinic where I got counseling. She was older and had good insurance through her employer. She suggested we could get married on paper, so I could be added to her plan. She said it would be temporary. She said I could pay her back. She knew we weren't in love. He dragged a hand across his mouth. I was desperate. I said yes. The room held that story like a fragile box. I didn't know where to place it, on a shelf of forgiveness or a shelf of rage. My heart felt like a room with two doors that refused to open at the same time. Cancer. Insurance. Marriage on paper.
Lies. Me.
Our vows. Did you love her? I asked because the human part of me needed to know the shape of the love that was not mine. No, he said quickly, and it didn't feel like a trick answer. It felt like a sad one. She didn't love me either. She loved what she could do. She loved helping. And he looked down as if the floor had something to say. I loved surviving. Harper's voice stayed calm. What started as a shortcut became fraud when the bills were submitted. When you returned to Ohio, Mr. Ward, you never dissolved the marriage. You avoided calls from the clinic when they asked for updated paperwork. And you never told Ms. Hart the truth before entering into a second marriage ceremony. Denise's chin trembled. He intended to make it right. He told me he'd fix it before today. He told me he would. I tried, Ethan whispered, eyes on me like I was the only person who could keep him breathing. Olivia, I tried to tell you. I sat in my car outside your apartment 6 times with the words in my mouth. I was going to tell you last night, then you showed me the vows you wrote and his voice broke. I got scared. I told myself one more day wouldn't hurt. I lied to myself because the truth felt like a bomb and I didn't know how to hold it without blowing us up. The part of me that works with scared kids heard the little boy inside this man. The part of me that stood in a lace slip tonight heard the woman who deserved a choice she never got. Both parts lived in the same body, and that body was shaking. What about what I found? I said, the words soft and stabbing. Between your legs. He closed his eyes. Reconstruction. A prosthesis. Complications. It's not simple. I should have told you. I should have let you decide if you still wanted me. He opened his eyes again, and didn't hide. He let me see the ache sitting behind them. He let me see the fear that had driven him like a bad driver going too fast in the dark. I took a breath that felt like a heavy box being lifted. I could have handled the truth, I said. I don't know what to do with a lie. Harper nodded, not in triumph, but in recognition. Ms. Hart, we need statements. We need you to understand the legal shape of this. There will be paperwork. There will be choices. You're not trapped. You are not at fault. She tapped the envelope again, then pointed to another document beneath the marriage certificate. And there's more you should see. Denise let out a small, broken sound. Please, Harper. Not tonight. Harper met her eyes, gentle but firm. You know we don't get to choose timing when harm grows from secrecy. I slid the next page free. It was a copy of a text thread, printed from screenshots. The number matched the one that had pinged Ethan's phone a minute ago. Hannah, you promised to tell her before the wedding. Hannah, if you don't, I will. I won't let another woman live in a shadow I helped make. Hannah, I booked a flight. Denise pressed a hand to her mouth. Ethan's face sagged. She said she would come if I didn't tell you. I asked her not to. I told her I would handle it. I kept saying tomorrow, and then tomorrow kept running away. The high, sharp edge of the night bent a little. A less extreme feeling bubbled up, tiredness. The kind that reaches your bones. I sat deeper into the chair and noticed ridiculous, ordinary things. The neat hotel pen by the notepad, the ribbon holding the curtain, a tiny chip in the lampshade no one but me would ever care about. The world still had small, silly details even when it felt like it was ending. Okay, I said after a long minute. Here is what I know how to do. I know how to listen. I know how to be kind and still tell the truth. I know that secrets rot love from the inside. So you're going to tell me everything. Not a version. Not a soft coat you put on a sharp thing. Everything. Then I will decide what I want to do with the rest of my life. Harper looked at me with respect. That is the right order. Denise stared at the carpet like it might offer a prayer. I raised him to be honest, she whispered, almost to herself. After his father left, I told him the truth is the one thing we don't bargain with. Ethan wiped his face with the back of his hand, nodded, and started talking. He told me about the diagnosis at 23 and the sudden, dizzy drop from feeling invincible to feeling breakable. He told me about the surgery and the kind nurse who made bad coffee jokes so he'd laugh and the empty seat where his father should have been. He told me about Kansas, flat roads, a cheap apartment near a clinic, a job at a warehouse that paid him in sore muscles, and not much else. He told me about meeting Hannah at 2 in the morning when his fear wouldn't let him sleep, and her saying, I have an idea that could save your life, but it's messy. He told me about shame hitting him like cold water when he stood in a courthouse and said vows he didn't mean, and then telling himself it was a kindness wrapped in paperwork. He told me about family calling and him pretending he was fine. He told me about bills and needles and hope. He told me about getting better, about a specialist who worked small miracles, about the whisper, you're going to live, kid, from a tired doctor with kind eyes. He told me he kept the paper marriage because untangling it felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. He told me every month he didn't fix it, the glass got thicker. He told me meeting me made the glass feel impossible. While he talked, I remembered little moments I hadn't given language to. The postcard pinned to the corkboard above his desk with a rusted windmill and a field under a huge sky. The Kansas license plate he bought at a flea market because it reminds me to keep going. The way he tensed at any form that asked for marital status, and how he would joke, it's complicated, and turn it into a story about Facebook that made everyone laugh. I listened and felt the room tilt back toward level, then tilt again. Kindness and anger is a strange duet. Both sang in me. When he finished, the quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was full of a new thing, truth, even if it came late and bleeding. I'm sorry, he said, hands shaking. I'm so sorry, Liv. I held his eyes. I believe you're sorry, I said, steady. I do not know yet if I forgive you. Those are different steps. And now I have to think about me. About what I lost tonight that I didn't even know I could lose.
We all sat with that.
Even Harper looked like she wanted to fold the whole night into a softer shape. A soft knock interrupted the moment. Not the bold knock from before. A gentle, almost polite knock. Harper turned her head with a little sigh, as if she had known this was part of the shape of the night. She moved to the door, glanced back at me, and said, Miss Hart, I need you to brace yourself. She opened the door. A woman stood there with a carry-on bag at her feet and eyes that looked like they had learned hard lessons and kept their softness anyway. She had brown hair pulled into a low braid and a small scar on her jaw that told a story I didn't know yet. She wore a sweatshirt that said Wichita State and no makeup. She looked like someone I might sit beside at a clinic waiting room and share a pack of gum with. Hannah Pierce? Harper asked, though the answer was already in the hallway. Yes, the woman said. Her eyes moved past the agent and found me. She did not flinch. I texted. He didn't answer. I flew in because I'm done talking to his fear. I want to talk to the woman he loves. Her voice didn't shake. I'm here to tell the truth with my own mouth. Denise made a small sound in her throat. Ethan covered his face with his hands. I stood, because sitting felt too powerless now. Hannah stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. She looked at me, not as an enemy, not as a thief, but as a woman who had also been dragged through a story she didn't write. She set her bag down by the chair like she was putting down a heavy memory. I'm sorry, she said to me, plain and clear. I'm sorry for my part in your pain. And I brought something you need to see. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second envelope, thicker than the first, sealed with blue tape and a hospital label across the front. She held it out. I took it, my fingers barely touching the cool paper, and felt the whole room lean toward me. I looked at the label. Wesley Medical Center, patient, Ethan Michael Ward, surgical photographs and notes. The floor slid. The world narrowed. The kindness in me and the anger in me stopped singing and just stared. Because whatever was inside this envelope would not only explain what I had found between my husband's legs. It would show it. The envelope felt heavier than paper should ever feel. Blue tape stretched across the flap like a warning. I held it in both hands, the same way you'd hold a fragile box that could explode. The room seemed to lean toward me, Harper with her steady investigator eyes, Denise clutching her coat as if it could shield her from shame, Ethan with his head in his hands, and Hannah with her calm, almost sorrowful gaze fixed on me. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because once I opened it, I would see what my mind had already been screaming about since I touched my husband on our wedding night. Once I opened it, there would be no more shadows, no more maybe I imagined it, no more he'll explain tomorrow. Only raw truth, in photographs and medical words. Olivia, Ethan said quietly, his voice breaking, please don't look at those. Not tonight. Hannah shook her head firmly.
No, Ethan. She has to.
She deserves the truth you kept from her. She deserves to know it from the source, not just your fear, not just your shame. The word shame made Ethan flinch. Harper crossed her arms but said nothing, watching me with the patience of someone who had seen families collapse in rooms like this before. I slipped my finger under the flap. My chest pounded so hard I thought the envelope would hear it. Then I paused. If I look at this, I whispered, everything changes. I can't go back to the woman who didn't know. Not ever. Hannah's eyes softened. You already can't go back. The moment you screamed tonight, that door closed. She was right. I peeled the tape back, the rip echoing in the silent room. Inside were glossy photographs and typed surgical notes. The first image made my throat close. The sterile blue sheets of an operating room, bright lights above, and Ethan's body under them, mid-procedure. The notes in the margin described a radical orchiectomy, removal, reconstruction attempt, post-operative complications. Words clinical and cold, but the pictures, oh, the pictures were not cold. They screamed. I shuffled through them with shaking hands. Scars where life had taken and left nothing. Medical devices that looked more like punishment than healing. Attempts to build something that could never match what was lost. My breath came fast and shallow. My eyes blurred. I wasn't just looking at my husband's secret. I was looking at his survival, carved into him like a cruel signature. I dropped the pictures on the table. The sound was small, but in that moment it felt louder than my scream had been earlier. Denise's hand shot out, covering the photographs like a mother bird shielding something too fragile. Her lips trembled. He almost died, she whispered. My boy almost died, and all I wanted was to keep him safe. If shame was the price, then fine, I would carry it. But love shouldn't be punishment. Love should be mercy. I stared at Ethan. He was crying openly now, silent tears sliding down his face. He didn't try to hide anymore. He looked stripped bare, not by the surgery but by the truth finally out in the open. I'm sorry, he said again, and the words sounded too small against the weight of everything. I thought if you saw me, if you knew, you'd never love me. And I couldn't survive losing you too. I wanted to scream again. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to tell him that he had taken my choice, stolen it like a thief in the night. But I also wanted to sit beside him, to touch his hand, to tell him he wasn't a monster for surviving. That was the cruelest part. My anger and my empathy were fighting like wolves inside me. I could have handled the truth, I said, voice trembling. I would have chosen to love you anyway.
But you didn't give me that chance.
You lied. You built us on silence, and now everything feels broken. Silence pressed in. The kind of silence that feels like 1,000 pounds on your chest. Then Harper cleared her throat, practical as ever. There's more you need to understand, Miss Hart. Ethan's legal status, his marriage to Hannah, isn't just paperwork. There are investigations tied to it. Insurance fraud. Cross-state filings. If it's not resolved, it won't just be about annulments or divorce. There could be charges. The room tilted again. Charges. I repeated, numb. Hannah nodded. I warned him. I begged him to file for annulment before it spiraled. I can handle the fallout on my end, but if he keeps running, Olivia, it won't just be your heart he breaks. It'll be your life, too. You'll get pulled into hearings.
Courts.
Depositions. People will ask you to swear under oath about a marriage that wasn't real. The less extreme part of the night, the ordinary bride who thought her biggest worry would be running out of champagne, was gone forever. That Olivia had been buried under hospital notes and government seals. And just when I thought the night couldn't twist any further, a loud thud hit the hotel door. Not a knock. A thud. The kind of sound that says someone isn't asking to be let in, they're demanding it. Harper's hand moved to her waist, brushing against something under her blazer. Denise gasped. Ethan stood up, so fast his chair toppled backward. Another thud rattled the door. Ethan, a man's voice boomed, rough and furious. You think you can hide from me forever? You think Kansas won't follow you? My blood turned to ice. Whoever was on the other side of that door was not a bellhop, not a guest, not family. He was a storm, and he had just found us. The pounding on the door didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper, as if the wood itself would split. The man's voice cut through the air again, deep and jagged like broken glass.
Ethan.
Open this damn door before I break it down. Harper was already moving. Her hand slipped inside her blazer, pulling out the unmistakable shape of a firearm, small, black, and steady in her grip. She raised one finger to her lips, signaling for silence, then mouthed to me, "Stay back." My knees buckled, but I stayed on my feet, my back pressed against the wall. My heartbeat roared in my ears like a drumline. Denise gasped, clutched the chair in front of her, and whispered Ethan's name like a prayer. Ethan's face drained of blood. He knew the voice. That much was clear. Who is that? I demanded, my whisper sharp. Ethan's lips trembled. He stopped, shaking his head like saying the name would give the man even more power. The door rattled again, this time with the jarring sound of a shoulder slam. The chain lock groaned. Another hit, and it might snap. Harper positioned herself at an angle by the frame, her gun low but ready. "Mr. Ward," she hissed, never looking away from the door, "you need to tell me who that is. Now." "It's Caleb," Ethan finally choked out. "Hannah's brother." Hannah flinched, her hands balling into fists. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't," he promised, but the next slam against the door proved promises meant nothing to Caleb. "What does he want?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. Answers, vengeance, maybe even blood. Ethan's eyes darted toward the window, like escape was possible. "He hates me. He thinks I used Hannah, thinks I ruined her life." "You did," Hannah shot back, her voice cracking. "Not the way he believes, but you did." Caleb's voice thundered through the wood again. "You took my sister for insurance. You left her to clean up your mess while you ran off and played house with someone else. You coward. Open this door or I swear." The chain lock strained again under his weight. One more slam, and it would break. Harper's voice turned hard, all business. "Everyone back. Now." We scrambled. Denise pulled Ethan toward the far corner. Hannah stayed close to me, her hand brushing mine. Two women tied together by a man's choices. My legs felt like jelly, but adrenaline kept me moving. Then came the final hit. The chain snapped. The door flew open with a crack that echoed through the suite. Caleb stormed in, broad-shouldered and wild-eyed, his face twisted with fury. He wasn't just angry, he was the kind of angry that looked feral, untamed. In his hand, he held something metal. Not a gun. Not a knife. A wrench, heavy and oil-stained, like he had carried it from a garage straight into war. He raised it, pointing it at Ethan. You destroyed her. Now I'll destroy you. Drop it, Harper barked, stepping forward, gun raised. Her voice carried the weight of authority, sharp enough to slice through his rage. For a split second, the room froze. Caleb's chest heaved. His eyes flicked between Harper's weapon and Ethan trembling in the corner. His grip on the wrench tightened. I said drop it. Harper roared. But instead of lowering the wrench, Caleb swung it. Downward. Fast, slamming into the edge of the dresser with a crash. Wood splintered. Sparks of fury seemed to fly from his body. He turned toward Ethan, taking one step, then another. I couldn't breathe. Denise screamed. Hannah shouted. Caleb, stop. Harper's finger tightened on the trigger. And just when it seemed the room would explode with violence, Ethan did something none of us expected. He stepped forward. No, I shouted, reaching for him, but he pulled free. He stood there, chest heaving, tears streaking down his face. If you're going to kill me, he said, voice hoarse, then kill me. I've lived with death before. I'm not afraid anymore. The wrench hung in the air between them, Caleb's hand trembling. Harper's gun was steady, aimed at his heart. The entire room balanced on the edge of one decision, Caleb's next move. The air was thick with terror and truth. And then, Caleb's arm swung. The wrench came down. The wrench came down with a scream of air. Time slowed, stretching into thin glass seconds. Denise's cry ripped through the suite. My stomach lurched, expecting to hear the crack of bone. But it never came. Because Harper moved. In one swift motion, she lunged forward, grabbing Caleb's wrist with a force that made the wrench jar sideways. The metal slammed against the dresser again, splintering more wood instead of Ethan's skull. Caleb roared in frustration, trying to wrench his arm free, but Harper was trained, her stance rooted, her grip unshakable. Drop it, she barked again, twisting his wrist at an angle that made the tendons scream. Caleb snarled. His eyes burned with rage, but beneath it, I saw something else, fear. Fear so deep it made him wild. Do you know what he did to my sister? Caleb spat, veins bulging at his neck. He used her like a damn... He broke her. And you, he jerked his chin toward me. He's already doing the same to you.
Can't you see?
He's poison. The words hit like punches, but I couldn't answer. My voice was locked behind my ribs. Hannah's voice broke the air instead. Caleb, stop. Please. He froze. Just for a second. His sister's voice cut through where threats and guns could not. His grip faltered. Harper used the moment, one swift twist, and the wrench clattered to the floor with a heavy thud. She kicked it aside, keeping her gun leveled at his chest. Sit down, she commanded.
Now.
Caleb's chest heaved, his eyes still blazing, but the fight drained out of him like water from a cracked glass. He staggered backward, sank onto the edge of the bed, and buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook with the kind of grief that comes after rage burns out. The room was still. Too still. The only sounds were Caleb's ragged breathing and the faint hum of the city outside. Ethan leaned against the wall, pale and trembling. He hadn't moved since Harper disarmed Caleb. His eyes darted from me to Hannah to the photographs still half hidden under Denise's hand. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, like a boy, not a man. I finally found my voice. It came out raw, like it had been dragged over broken glass. Tell me, is it true? Did you use her? Did you use Hannah? Ethan's eyes snapped to mine, wide, wounded. No, Liv, it wasn't like that. I didn't use her. He swallowed hard. I begged. I was desperate. She offered. I swear to you, I never. Enough, Hannah said sharply, cutting him off. Everyone turned. She stood tall now, her hands clenched at her sides, her eyes wet but steady. For the first time tonight, she didn't look like a victim or an ally. She looked like someone ready to burn the lies to ash. Olivia deserves the whole truth. Not your version. Not your edits. The truth. She reached into her bag again, pulling out another folded set of papers. She tossed them onto the table where the medical photos already lay. I stepped closer, my hands shaking as I unfolded the pages. My eyes scanned the bold heading. Affidavit of support, spousal sponsorship. And below, Hannah's name. Ethan's name. Her signature. His signature. The date 3 years ago. I looked up, my breath shallow. What is this? Hannah's voice was low, steady. He didn't just marry me for insurance. He signed legal documents tying me to his debts. He told me it was temporary. That as soon as he recovered, he'd dissolve everything. But the bills kept coming, Olivia. Collection calls. Letters. His name on every one and mine attached to them. He promised to fix it. He promised over and over. Caleb's fists clenched, his voice muffled through his hands. She almost lost her house.
Her job.
Because of him. Ethan shook his head violently, tears streaming. I paid what I could. I didn't abandon her. I sent money. Scraps? Hannah spat, her voice cracking. You sent scraps while I bled myself dry trying to cover what you left. And then you walked away. You built a new life while I was still chained to your old one. The words hit me harder than any wrench could. The image of Ethan I had clung to, the patient, the kind, the man of quiet strength shattered like glass. He turned to me, desperation raw in his voice. Liv, I never meant to hurt her. I thought I was saving my life. I thought I was buying time until I could stand on my own. I didn't realize I was drowning her while I was learning to breathe again. Please believe me. I didn't mean for any of this. The room spun. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me steady. For the first time, I wished the wrench had landed, because at least then, the pain would have been physical, something I could point to. Instead, it was everywhere, invisible and crushing. Harper finally holstered her gun, but kept her voice firm. Enough lies. Enough half-truths. Tonight is the end of hiding. Mr. Ward, your choices don't just affect you anymore. They've pulled in everyone in this room, and there are legal consequences waiting outside of it. The weight of her words settled heavy. Legal consequences.
Fraud. Debt.
Betrayal. And then, as if the night hadn't already been stretched past breaking, the hotel phone on the nightstand rang. A shrill, sudden sound. Everyone froze. 1 ring.
2.
3. Denise's hand trembled toward it. She picked it up, pressed it to her ear, and listened. Her face drained of color. Slowly, she lowered the receiver, her lips parting but no words coming out. What is it? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She swallowed hard, her eyes wide with something I'd never seen before, fear mixed with recognition. They know we're here, she whispered. And they're coming up. The line went dead. The next sound we heard was the ding of the elevator at the end of the hall. The elevator ding echoed down the hallway like a funeral bell. We all froze, every breath in the room caught in the same net. Harper's hand instinctively went back to her weapon, her eyes narrowing toward the door. Caleb lifted his head, his fury replaced by something else, dread. Hannah's face went pale, and even Ethan, shaking, broken Ethan, seemed to shrink into the corner as if the walls could protect him. The footsteps came next.
Slow. Heavy.
More than one pair. The muffled thud of boots against hotel carpet, deliberate and in sync. Whoever they weren't guests stumbling back from a late wedding party. This was something darker. Denise whispered, "Oh God." Her knuckles whitened around the phone receiver she still hadn't put back. "It's them." "Who?" I demanded, my voice sharp in the quiet. "Who's coming?" No one answered fast enough. The footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside the door. Then a voice, deep, calm, with the kind of authority that makes your stomach turn. "Ethan Michael Ward. It called clear through the wood. "This is Special Agent Morris with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Open the door." Harper stiffened. Her grip on her weapon tightened. "Morris," she muttered under her breath, like the name carried weight. She glanced at Ethan, then at Hannah. "You didn't tell me they were moving in this fast." Hannah shook her head frantically. "I didn't know. Harper, I swear." A louder knock rattled the door. "Ward, don't make this harder. We know you're inside. We have authority to detain you. Open the door now." Ethan's knees buckled. He slid down the wall, his hands clutching his head. "No, no, no," he whispered. "Not tonight. Please, not tonight." Harper crouched in front of him, her tone urgent but controlled. "Listen to me, Ethan. This doesn't go away by hiding. If you cooperate now, you might still walk out of this with some control left. If you resist, if you run, they'll bury you in charges." Denise dropped to her knees beside her son, clutching his arm. "Don't let them take him," she begged Harper, her voice trembling. "He just got married. He's trying to start over. Please." Something in me snapped. "Start over?" I said, my voice louder than I meant. Everyone looked at me, but I couldn't stop. He lied to me. He married me while still married to someone else. He let me stand at that altar believing everything was real. He didn't give me a choice. And now you want me to believe he deserves protection? My chest heaved. The anger I had been holding back since I screamed in that room earlier surged forward, sharp and unrelenting. Ethan lifted his head, his eyes wet and desperate. "Liv, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought if I just fixed everything fast enough, you'd never have to know." I shook my head, tears burning. "You didn't fix anything. You just left bombs under the floorboards and hoped I'd never step on them." Another knock shook the door, louder this time, followed by the metallic click of a master key sliding into the lock. "They're coming in," Harper warned. She turned to Ethan. "This is it. You either walk out or get dragged out." Panic clawed up Ethan's throat. He scrambled to his feet, looking wildly around the room like a trapped animal. I can't go with them. They'll destroy me. Everything's gone if I go." Caleb stood now, his face still hard but calmer than before. "Everything's already gone," he said coldly. "You just don't want to admit it." The lock clicked. The handle turned. Ethan moved. Not toward the door, but toward me. He grabbed my hands, his grip iron despite the tremor in his arms. His eyes bored into mine, raw and frantic. "Olivia," he whispered fiercely, "please. Tell them you didn't know.
Tell them you'll stand by me."
If you just say you'll fight with me, I can survive this. You're the only thing I have left." My chest seized. My mind spun. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Harper's sharp, Hannah's wary, Denise's pleading, Caleb's disgusted. The door burst open before I could answer. 3 agents swept in, badges flashing, voices booming commands. "Everyone back. Hands where we can see them." Chaos filled the room. Denise screamed. Caleb cursed. Hannah reached for me like she could shield me. Harper stood tall, her weapon lowered now, but her stance still protective. And Ethan held onto me like I was a lifeline being cut. The agents moved fast, one of them seizing his arm, the other snapping cold steel handcuffs around his wrists. He struggled, his eyes never leaving mine. "Liv," he shouted, his voice breaking as they pulled him toward the door. "Don't let them take me. Please. I love you, I love you." The words tore through me. And yet, all I could think was this. Love built on lies isn't love at all. The agents dragged him into the hall, his shouts echoing down the corridor. The sound made my stomach twist. Silence fell after they were gone, broken only by Denise's sobs. Hannah stood frozen, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Caleb exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath for years. Harper pinched the bridge of her nose, muttering something I couldn't hear. And me? I stood in the middle of the wreckage, bride, widow, victim, maybe survivor, all at once. But deep in my chest, beneath the grief and fury, a new feeling stirred. Something sharp, Something cold. Something that whispered this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because betrayal this deep doesn't end with tears. It ends with revenge. The silence after Ethan was dragged away clung to the air like smoke after a fire. The hotel room looked wrecked, chairs tipped, wood splintered where Caleb's wrench had landed, photographs scattered like broken truths. Denise sat on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands, sobbing quietly. Hannah leaned against the wall, arms wrapped around herself, while Caleb stood rigid, fists clenched at his sides. Harper was the only one who looked steady, but even she kept scanning the room, as if expecting another storm to blow through the door. And me? I stood there in my ruined robe, veil still hanging in the closet, my wedding night shattered into something unrecognizable. My hands shook, but not from fear anymore. From clarity. From something sharper. I had spent hours drowning in confusion, grief, and pity. But now that Ethan was gone, cuffed and dragged away by men who knew more about his lies than I did, one truth rose above all others. I would not be his collateral damage. I would not cry quietly and vanish. I would make sure the world saw exactly who Ethan Michael Ward really was. Denise lifted her head, eyes red and pleading. Olivia, please, you have to understand. He was scared. He made mistakes, yes, but he's not evil. He wanted love. He wanted life. I stared at her, my jaw tight. Love doesn't lie like that. And life built on destroying other people isn't a life worth defending. Her lips trembled. She looked ready to argue, but she must have seen something in my face, something harder than she expected, because she shut her mouth and turned away. Hannah pushed off the wall, her voice low and tired. You're stronger than I was. I let him string me along for years, believing his promises that he'd fix things, that he'd make it right. I kept carrying his debts, his secrets. Don't you do the same. Her words struck deep, like a warning carved into stone. I nodded slowly. I won't. Caleb's voice came next, sharp as steel. Good. Because men like Ethan? They don't change. They just move from one woman to the next, leaving wreckage behind. You've got the chance to burn his mask off while he still thinks he can charm his way out. I turned to Harper, who had been silent, observing me with an unreadable expression. What happens now? I asked. She sighed, slipping her weapon back into her holster. He'll be transported back to Kansas. There'll be hearings, maybe a trial. Fraud, false marriage, debts. He's got a mountain of consequences waiting. And yes, Olivia, you'll be called. You'll be asked to testify about your marriage, about what you knew, what you didn't. Your words could make or break parts of the case. I exhaled slowly. My pulse quickened, not from dread, but from opportunity. So that's how I would do it. Not with shouting. Not with violence. Not even with forgiveness. With truth. With exposure. I would strip away the mask Ethan had built so carefully, show the world the man who pretended patience and kindness while weaving lies thick enough to choke the women who loved him. I would use the very stage he thought would protect him, the courtroom, to end him. I'll testify, I said firmly, my voice steady for the first time all night. And I won't hold back. Harper studied me for a long moment, then nodded with a faint trace of respect. Good. Just know, it won't be easy. Defense attorneys will tear into you. They'll try to make you doubt yourself. They'll try to twist your words. They can try, I said, lifting my chin. But I've been living inside his lies long enough. I'm done bending. Hannah stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. When you stand there, don't just do it for yourself. Do it for me. For every woman he's ever fooled into carrying his shame. Make him feel the weight of it. I looked into her eyes, saw the years she had lost, the scars she carried. I nodded. I will. Caleb finally unclenched his fists, his voice softer now. Then maybe all this wreckage will mean something. The sound of sirens faintly reached the window, distant but approaching. Harper straightened, her phone buzzing with updates. They're transporting him now. You'll get contacted soon about next steps. She gave me one last look. Rest tonight if you can. Tomorrow, the war begins. She left, the door clicking shut behind her. Hannah and Caleb gathered their things quietly, preparing to go. Before she left, Hannah paused at the door. Olivia, don't let him own even one more piece of your heart.
Take it back.
All of it. I nodded again. She and Caleb slipped out, leaving just Anise and me in the wrecked room. She looked at me with hollow eyes. You really mean to destroy him, don't you? I met her gaze, cold but clear. He destroyed himself. I'm just not going to cover the ashes. She broke then, sobbing into her hands again, rocking on the edge of the bed. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. I walked to the closet, pulled my wedding dress from its hanger, and stared at it. White lace, shimmering under the soft light, something that had once symbolized purity, hope, beginnings. Now it was nothing but a costume for play that had ended before the first act. I folded it carefully, placed it in the hotel trash bin, and closed the lid. It felt like the first step of many, because Ethan thought the truth would never catch him. He thought silence and charm could hide scars and crimes alike. But he was wrong.
I would stand in that courtroom.
I would tell everything. I would look him in the eyes as his world burned, and I would not flinch. And when it was over, when his name was dragged through the mud he buried us in, I would finally breathe free. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. This was justice. This was revenge.